Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This video clip was taken, as you can see, in 1971 in Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. Life for the rural blacks was tough. And now, 45 years after independence, it is a pity that one has to acknowledge that nothing has changed. The rural Zimbabwean is no better off. If anything, indeed, they're worse off now, economically and politically. Nothing has changed. And yet so many people risk their lives in the fight for independence. And it is, of course, disappointing that 45 years after independence, one has to acknowledge that nothing has changed. I'll just play the video clip, show you the rural Zimbabwe at the time.
Perhaps 3 million blacks live in the tribal trust lands, areas traditionally theirs. For many Africans to talk of a concept of Western democracy. On a practical level, the government is spending thousands of pounds on teaching them modern farming methods. Their Africans, they say, are better off, more literate than in any other part of the continent, except South Africa. And if in this government-sponsored cooking class the terminology is Western, with talk of spoonsful, pounds and ounces, it only underlines the final irony of the situation. Because the more the African becomes educated to Western ways and values, the more he will covet the standard of living and the political freedom that his European neighbour enjoys. The most crucial statistic in Rhodesia today is that the black population will double in the next 18 years. A few black Africans have fine homes like these on the outskirts of Salisbury. As the population grows, so too will the ambitions of the black majority.
Well, that is very true. And one cannot deny that political reality, that political and economic reality. The white regime in Rhodesia, Ian Smith and his fellow whites, resisted empowering the blacks because they feared that an economically empowered black would tomorrow turn around and demand political empowerment, as the documentary was trying to show you there. And so the white regime denied the blacks economic empowerment. And one of the most graphic ways was to deny the rural people, where the majority of blacks lived, title deeds to even the few acres of land on which their mud hut stood. What most people have found truly disappointing is that after independence, the black government have resorted to the same dirty tactics. Zanu PF has resisted all calls to give the rural people title deeds to land. For the majority of the blacks, that will be the only way they can get their foot on the first run of economic empowerment. The Zanu PF regime has resisted that. It has maintained the tribal trustland system inherited from the whites. Politically, on paper, the people got majority rule. That means they could vote. In reality, there's been a meaningless vote because the only vote that has counted in Zimbabwe ever since the country's independence is the vote for Zanu PF. The country has failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. One of the things that Ian Smith said in arguing that there should be no majority rule, he argued that the blacks are incapable of self-government. And this is why we cannot have majority rule. And when you look at Zimbabwe today, 45 years after independence, with the country sinking ever deeper and deeper into economic and political chaos, it is a damning indictment that, after all, A. Smith was right. What makes it worse that many blacks out there do not even have the guts to admit that our system of government has failed us. And so the country keeps blundering from pillar to post, from one dictator to another. What is so disappointing is that we are failing this self-government in this day and age. We still have the notion of government of the primeval, dominate or be dominated. That, of course, does not work, because that is exactly what has landed us where we are today, where Zanu PF excludes all other political parties in the mentality of you must dominate. And having eliminated the opposition, the Zanu PF leaders themselves start fighting among themselves. The factional fighting within Zanu PF has always been there, even long before independence, and is still there to this day. Right now, the party is in the middle of this factional war between the Chiwenga faction versus Mnangagwa faction. Before that, it was Mnangagwa versus Mugabe. And at the end of each factional war, all the nation ever got is one dictator replacing another. And meanwhile, the chaos and confusion and looting and killings have continued. We still have to rise to the level where we realize that dominate or be dominated is a disaster. We need to move on to a more better, stable system where we treat and respect others as we would want them to treat and respect us. But that is proving to be a bridge too far for us. What is disappointing is in this day and age, we're still failing to see that. This is something that the ancient Greeks figured out more than 2,500 years ago. And other nations have copied and adapted it and moved on. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And yet, copying and adapting it is proving to be a bridge too far. Here is a video clip of one of the things that led to democracy. The Greeks had realized that there are three types of human beings. And it is the third type, the citizen, who is capable or competent to rising up above the primeval, dominate or be dominated.
There are always three kinds of people in any given society. This threefold distinction has been noted and made by notable sociologists and public intellectuals. But this threefold distinction of the three kinds of people, it was first identified and first stated by the supporters and founders of democracy in ancient Greece. For the Greek people, the people who in many ways gave us the modern civilized world, for the Greek people, the first kind of people in any given society are the idiots. For the Greeks, the idiot is not necessarily someone who is mentally deficient. Rather, for ancient Greek people, the idiot, they said, is someone who is a totally private person, a totally self-centered person, and a totally selfish person. They called him the idiot. The idiot, he is always out for his personal gain and his personal interests. He does not have a public philosophy. He has no knowledge, no skill, no character, and no virtues to be able to live and to be able to contribute in a flourishing society and community. He's all out for his personal pleasures and for his personal treasures. And the Greeks said that the idiot was just an upgraded barbarian. The first kind of person, the idiot. But the Greeks also said that there is a second kind of people in any given society. And the Greeks called these people the tribes people. When we say tribes people, we don't necessarily mean the fact of belonging to a certain tribe, which is a good thing. But when they use the word tribes people, the Greeks meant a tribal and a tribalistic mentality. And the Greeks said that tribes people are those people who are not able to think beyond their small tribe or their small groups. For tribes people, their primary allegiance, their only allegiance, and their ultimate allegiance is to their tribe. Their tribe is their God, and their religion is tribalism. And tribes people, the Greeks said, are always afraid of things that are different, that are a little alien to them. They are always suspicious and fearful. And they always dealt with different people and difficult situations with intimidation, with force, and with violence. And the Greeks also said that the ideal person for tribes people is the warrior, because tribes people are a war-making people. Their ideal is the warrior. But it was not so for the Greeks. For the Greeks, there was another kind of people, another kind of a person, and that was the ideal person. And the Greeks called this ideal person the citizen. The citizen. And here when we use the word citizen, we are not talking about legal status or political status. We are talking about the idea and the ideal of citizenship. And who is the citizen? The citizen, according to the Greeks, is someone who has the skills and the knowledge to live a public life, who is able to live a life of civility. The citizen recognizes that he or she is a member of a commonwealth and thus strives for the common good. That is the citizen. The citizen, yes, he or she knows his or her rights in a society, but he or she also knows his or her responsibilities to society. The citizen can fight for his rights, but always with an awareness of and with a respect for the rights and interests of others, of their neighbors, of the smallest of minorities, and of the...
Well, I think we can honestly say that in the case of Zimbabwe, our leaders are at the very best, have the tribes mentality. They've never, ever aspired to be citizens because all they can think about is dominating or be dominated. And unfortunately, the electorate has not been smart enough to realize we have the wrong kind of leaders. And so they've been recruited as the foot soldiers by the leaders. And they've fulfilled their role with the passion that has ended up with a situation where it is very common for supporters of one group to consider the supporters of the other as enemies. And so it has become very common to find supporters of Party A attacking supporters of Party B. What they are, of course, fighting for is the dominance of a particular party, of a particular leader. And in most cases, they find themselves the victims of the failed system. There is no denying that Zimbabwe is a failed state. And we have been stuck in this situation for 45 years and counting. There have been opportunities to end the dictatorship. We've wasted them. And we, the voters, have played our part in that. For instance, one of the issues that has been the burning issues this last 2 years is the very fact that Chamisa called his followers to participate in 2023 on the basis of an idiotic lie that he had plugged the vote-taking loopholes. And you would think by now, those supporters, 2 million of them, have finally figured it out, that they were conned. that plugging the vote rigging loopholes was a lie. But alas, many of them still have not figured it out. They still believe Chamisa is the nation's best foot forward. Meaning, of course, that Chamisa can come back, con them once again to participate in a flawed 2028 election to perpetuate the Zanu PF dictatorship. Both the leaders and the people, we are at best, we still have the tribesman mentality. And one of the weaknesses of the tribesman mentality is that truth, facts, reality count for nothing. We focus on the tribe, and we think that by promoting the interests of the tribe at all costs, we are promoting ourselves. This dominate or be dominated mentality. And in some cases, of course, it has soared to the levels of personality cult mentality, where leaders like Chamisa are considered to be demigods. And anyone who dares to criticize him has become public enemy number one. Yes, as a people, we have failed to govern ourselves. And probably the first step in correcting that is that we should admit it. That is proving to be such a bitter pill for some people to swallow. And yet, unless we swallow it, we are not getting out of this hell. We need to raise our level of intellectual level from this tribesman mentality to a citizen mentality. Democracy demands that the people should be educated, knowledgeable, objective, and diligent in holding the leaders to account. You cannot do that if you consider a leader to be a demigod. We are a failed state. We should have the guts to admit it, that we are a failed state. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.